No, Sam, it's a Western. Yes, it's a film noir too. Film noir, if you're French. Yes, absolutely. Cowboys and Indians. Definitely a Western, definitely a film noir. Okay, talk to you later. The Lost Dutchman gold mine isn't just a myth. It's the backbone of this dark, twisting Western noir you've probably never seen. So let's start at the beginning. Hello to all the classic people who are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors and let you know that there will be spoilers ahead. Today on Classic Movie Review, we're taking on the Western Film Noir Lust for Gold 1949. IMDb.com has this film rated at 6.8, which is pretty fair. On RottenTomatoes.com, the film doesn't have a tomato meter score and only has 68% audience approval. Currently have this film rated at 135 on my list of all film noirs. Lust for Gold 1949 is set in the late 1940s, but in the classic film noir fashion, it flashes back to the 19th century Western era to complete the tale. Directed by S. Sylvan Simon, this film has a great cast that includes Ida Lupino, Glenn Ford, Gig Young, Edgar Buchanan, Will Geer, Arthur Honeycutt, Percy Helton, and Jay Silverheels. Actors: Ida Lupino was cast as Julia Thomas, a somewhat ambitious Western-era baker and shop owner. I've already covered this great film noir actress and director in two films. These are High Sierra 1941 and Roadhouse 1948. Glenn Ford played the very hostile immigrant Jacob Dutch Waltz, who was searching for gold in the Western era. We have covered Glenn Ford a lot as he is one of my favorites. These films include film noirs The Big Heat 1953, Human Desire 1954, Blackboard Jungle 1955, Western film noir The Violent Men 1955, regular Western The Man from the Alamo 1953, and the aviation thriller Fate is a Hunter 1964. Prolific actor William Prince was cast as Barry Storm. Prince was first covered playing the murdered Buddy in Dead Reckoning 1947 opposite Humphrey Bogart. Edward Buchanan played Weiser. Buchanan was first covered in the film noir Human Desire 1954. He is probably best known for playing the slow-moving Uncle Joe in Petticoat Junction. Jay Silverheels was in a small uncredited role as Deputy Walter. Of course, Silverheels was Tonto on the Lone Ranger television show 1949 to 1957. We've covered him briefly in Key Largo 1948 and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre 1948. Great voice Percy Helton was uncredited as the barber. We've mentioned him a few times in films including Miracle on 34th Street 1947, Film Noirs The Setup 1949, Thieves Highway 1949, and Kiss Me Deadly 1955. Arthur Honeycutt was in the uncredited role of Ludd-Eye. He's been covered in the film noir Border Incident 1949, Cat Ballou 1969, and El Dorado 1966. Gig Young was Pete Thomas, the cuckolded husband of Julia, Ida Lupino. Young was born in Minnesota in 1913. He was raised in Washington, D.C. and began performing in theater while in high school. Gig attended the Pasadena Community Playhouse on a scholarship. He was scouted during a play and eventually signed a contract with Warner Brothers. Like L.Q. Jones, Gig Young took his name from a character he played in a movie. In this case, the film was The Gay Sisters 1942. Gig's acting career was interrupted for 3 years while he served in the United States Coast Guard during World War II. Following his military service, Gig returned to work at Columbia. For his role in Come Fill the Cup 1951, he was nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar. He received another Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination for his role in the very funny Teacher's Pet in 1958, where he co-starred with Doris Day and Clark Gable. Gig worked extensively on television, but played a real stinker in They Shoot Horses, Don't They 1969. This time, he won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. During this time, he was dealing with alcoholism. This cost him the role of the Waco Kid in Blazing Saddles 1974 and the voice of Charlie on television's Charlie's Angels. Oddly, he still got film roles including Lovers and Other Strangers 1970 and Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia 1974. In 1978, Gig murdered his fifth wife, actress Kim Schmidt, before turning the gun on himself. He was 64 years old, and Schmidt, his wife of 3 weeks, was 31. Will Geer played the role of older Deputy Ray Coven. Geer was born in Indiana in 1902. He majored in botany, but his love of acting eventually took over. He began working in tent shows and on riverboats before moving to Broadway, television, and film. He also worked with Orson Welles in the Depression Relief Federal Theaters Project. He remained a liberal activist throughout his life. He was blacklisted after refusing to testify before the Un-American House Un-American Activities Committee. While best known for playing the sage grandfather on the Waltons 1972 to 78, Geer had a robust film career. Some of his films include Union Pacific 1939, Film Noir Johnny Allegro 1949, Western Film Noir Winchester 73 1950, The Barefoot Mailman 1951, Salt of the Earth 1954, the political drama Advise and Consent 1962, and the great Jeremiah Johnson 1972. Geer died in 1978. Prolific character actor Paul Ford was in the role of Sheriff Lynn Early. Ford was born in Maryland in 1901. He dropped out of college and worked as a salesman during the Great Depression. Near the end of the Depression, he moved into entertainment, working in theater and on radio. His first Broadway show was in 1944. Ford was successful on television with roles like Flustered Colonel Hall on The Phil Silvers Show. Ford moved into film, and some of his highlights include Film Noirs, The House on 92nd Street 1945, The Naked City 1948, All the King's Men 1949, and today's film Lust for Gold 1949. Other films include Western, The Kid from Texas 1950, drama The Tea House of the August Moon 1956, musical The Music Man 1962, political drama Advise and Consent 1962, comedies It's a Mad, 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 Mad World 1963, The Spy with a Cold Nose 1968, A Big Hand for the Little Lady 1968, which is pretty funny, The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming 1966, and The Comedians 1967. Ford retired in 1972 and died in 1976. Story: the credits roll over a vista of Superstition Mountain in Arizona. Then a letter, purportedly signed by the governor of Arizona, states that the story is substantiated by historical records and legends of the state. Narration begins that the mountain is a 40 by 20 mile pile of rock that is barbaric. Odd word choice. Floyd Buckley, Hayden Rourke, hikes into the mountains searching for gold. We probably all know Rourke as Dr. Bellows from I Dream of Jeannie. The time period is the late 1940s. The narration continues about how terrible it is in the mountains. It says 21 men have been murdered on the mountain. A shot rings out and Floyd Buckley dies. Barry Storm, William Prince, is nearby and hears the gunshot. He approaches to investigate. You know what I do when I hear gunshots? I duck. Storm was also looking for the mine, but not as seriously as others. Storm finds Buckley and begins running back to get help from the sheriff. It took 3 days to reach Sheriff Lynn Early, Paul Ford, Deputy Ray Coven, Will Geer, and Coroner Eddie Waller. The coroner examines the body while the other three watch. Sheriff Lynn takes Storm back to his office for questioning. Deputy Walter, J. Silverheels, is sitting inside on a bench. They lean on Storm about being around the murder. Storm says he was following Buckley to find the location of the lost Dutchman mine, as he believes he is the rightful owner because his grandfather was Jacob Dutch Waltz, Lynn Ford. Sheriff Lynn says Waltz killed a lot of men back in the 1880s. Storm begins his story flashing back to earlier when he visited the Phoenix Claims Office. The clerk, Virginia Farmer, says there is no record of the mine being recorded. She does tell him that the newspaper just ran a story on the mine. The story has a picture of Buckley and it says he is a noted explorer that will use old Spanish maps to locate the mine. Storm meets with Buckley. Buckley says that he has the Peralta map and that the Peralta and the Lost Dutchman mines are one and the same. Storm announces that he is Waltz's grandson and wants to go on the trip. Buckley says that he knows how to read the markers and never takes along a partner. They come back to the current time, and Storm says that's when he decided to follow Buckley. Coroner comes in and says Buckley was killed with a .30-30 and was shot from above. He's also found the Peralta map on a dead man. However, it's missing a section. Deputy Coven takes the map and won't let Storm see it. Sheriff Lynn is still suspicious of Storm, so he directs Deputy Coven and Walter to take Storm back to the mountain so they can check his story and movements. On the mountain, Coven grills Storm about what he saw and what he planned to do if Buckley found the mine. Coven searches for the location where the shots were fired from. He then says Buckley was the fourth to be shot in the last 2 years. He says 20 men have died on the mountain since 1880. Storm points out that it all took place in the shadow of a rock formation known as Weaver's Needle. Coven takes Storm to a saguaro cactus that has rocks hammered into it. He says only the north one points to a location in the rocks where some other signs are carved. They head up to the carvings. The signs are the Spanish word for gold, oro, a sunburst indicating that it's near, and another indicating that it is 50 yards away. A fourth symbol, a snake with its head pointing up, is present. Coven says no one has ever figured it out. He also says the signs were made by the 3 Spanish Peralta brothers. Coven continues to tell the story as they flash back 100 years to 3 men, Manuel, Pedro, and Ramon Antonio Marino. After they found the gold, they opened several mines before leaving. Pedro returned with a large expedition. The miners faced repeated attacks by the local Apache Indians, of which Deputy Walter is a descendant. Pedro hid the gold in the most inaccessible mine. He says they stored $20 million of gold in the mine. The Apaches attacked before the mine could be sealed. All of the miners were killed. The leader of the Apaches ordered the mine sealed as they felt the mountain was sacred. Back in modern time, Storm is overwhelmed by the story. He stays behind to search for the gold. Coven reminds him that a killer is in the area. Storm spends the next 5 days searching for clues to the mine's location. As he searches, someone aims at him through a rifle scope, but they don't shoot. Storm almost gets bitten by a large rattlesnake.
The only thing I learned was that the guy who'd murdered Buckley wasn't the only killer loose in superstition.
Having fallen onto the ground after the strike, Storm finds an old rifle in the dirt and believes it may have been his grandfather's. Storm leaves the mountain and takes the rifle to Sheriff Lynn for identification. The sheriff identifies the rifle as a Sharps breech-loading .45-90. This model was first manufactured in 1877, and the large grain size made it perfect for taking down larger game.
Legendary shot.
You know your weapons. It's a lever-action breech loader.
Sheriff Lynn tells Storm he should go to the Pioneers' home in Phoenix, which is actually an old folks' home. Storm jumps at the idea. At the Pioneers' Rest Home, Storm is taken to Mrs. Martha Bannister, Elsbeth Duggan. Martha is crabby. When she hears the name Jacob Waltz, she gets defensive, saying how mean the man was. Bill Bates, Paul E. Burns, jumps into the conversation and says Waltz was a real sidewinder. Snake, not a missile. Martha flashes back to when she was a girl in Florence Junction. The child actress is Carolyn Grimes, who played Zuzu in It's a Wonderful Life 1964. She asks questions like children do, and Jacob Waltz, Glenn Ford, tricks her into firing his rifle. She runs away scared. Waltz's partner, Weiser, Edgar Buchanan, says he is selling 2 burros to a Mexican man and his partner, Ludd-Eye, Arthur Honeycutt. Weiser knows that they are going to look for the lost mine. Ludd-Eye slips and calls his partner Peralta. This catches Weiser's full attention, and he runs the information back to Waltz. Waltz and Weiser follow Peralta and Ludd-Eye into the mountains. The followed pair camps for the night. Waltz believes the men know where they're heading, as they are not stopping to do any panning in the streams. There's a little tension between Waltz and Weiser over leadership. Waltz realizes that the men they are watching have not moved. They run down to the campsite and find that Peralta and Ludd-Eye have left dummies behind as they snuck away to their destination. A couple of nights later, Peralta and Ludd-Eye make it to the location of the markers, believing they have shaken their followers. Peralta says it has been 38 years to the day that he and his brothers were at the location. Peralta watches the moon rise through a notch in Weaver's Needle. The moonlight illuminates the location of the hidden mine. Peralta and Ludd-Eye begin digging during the night. Later, Waltz and Weiser find the other men digging in the mine. They murder Peralta and Luddite in cold blood. As soon as Walt sees the gold, he murders his partner Weiser. Waltz dumps the bodies and takes some of the gold back to Florence Junction. The town goes wild when they hear of the gold strike. Baker and shopkeeper Julia Thomas, Ida Lupino, closes her shop and heads to where the gold is being weighed. Parsons, Will Wright, assays the ore at $40,000 per ton, making it one of the biggest strikes ever known. When Waltz's name is heard, people speculate that he is a Dutchman, meaning German. His nickname is Dutchy. As soon as Waltz gets his money, he heads to a saloon for drinking and companionship. Back at the bakery, Julia interacts with her husband, Pete Thomas, Gig Young. It's pretty clear that they don't care for each other. What's that called? Oh, marriage. Julia tells Pete that she intends to meet Waltz because he has found gold. She runs down every mistake Pete has made, including a murder. She orders Pete to bring Waltz to the home, but not to let him know that they are married. In the saloon, Waltz is singing in German and drinking like a German. The people in the saloon try to get him to give up the location of the mine. Pete tries a couple of times to approach Waltz, but he is rebuffed. Saloon girl, Lucille Myrna works Waltz pretty hard, but also strikes out.
On the inside of the mine, there's a vein of gold as thick as her waist.
The saloon manager orders the bartender to give Waltz a Mickey Finn. A Mickey is a drug-laced drink designed to knock the drinker out. It is named after a Chicago bartender and manager, Michael Mickey Finn, of the Lone Star Saloon from 1896 to 1903. He is said to have spiked drinks to rob the customers. The saloon manager throws Waltz out, but the gold miner pulls a gun and shoots up the bar from the outside. Waltz passes out right in front of the bakery, and Julia sees her opportunity. She takes him inside and puts him to bed. When Pete tries to get inside, Julia sends him away. Waltz wakes in the morning, not knowing how he arrived at the bakery and house. He is shocked to find his money carefully laid out beside his other belongings. Waltz is suspicious, but Julia is as sweet as sugar. She pretends to not know about the gold mine. When she speaks German to Waltz, the man is hooked, deep in the gills. When a woman is rude to Julia about prices, Waltz buys everything in the bakery. He gives it away to a boy sitting by a burro. The boy is played by Billy Gray, who was a kid in The Day the Earth Stood Still 1951, and Bud in the television show Father Knows Best. Waltz cleans up and goes to Julia's that night for a date. She works her femme fatale magic, and Waltz is drawn deeper in. He kisses her and she throws him out, reinforcing that she is a virtuous woman.
Sorry.
Good night.
Pete is watching from outside when Waltz leaves. Over the next few weeks, the pair continue to date. A man in the barbershop, John Duchette, tells another man that Waltz doesn't know Julia is married even though a good amount of time has passed. He says that Waltz has made 5 trips back to the mine. The barber, Percy Helton, has his hair plastered to his scalp like an M.C. Escher drawing. Pete comes in for a haircut, but Waltz comes in right after. The townsmen laugh at Pete and he storms out. Waltz wants to know why they are laughing at Pete, but the men go mute. Pete goes to Julia's bakery/home, regretting that he has ever gone along with the scheme, which he thinks is taking too long. Eventually, she slaps Pete and throws him out just before Waltz arrives.
I'll send for you when I want you, Pete. When I want you. That's him. Go out the back door. Go on.
Julia confesses to Waltz that she is married, but it's all part of the scheme. Waltz hands over $2,000 and says he will get $5,000 total to get Pete to sign divorce papers. Waltz has to leave for the mine again to raise the additional funds. Many of the town folks try to follow Waltz to the mine. Pete is mocked by a man in the bar. He goes to Julia and tells her that she is through with Waltz. He says he will tell Waltz the truth and kill him afterwards. Julia pulls Pete back into her scheme. From outside, Walt hears Julia say that she is only interested in the location of the mine. Walt goes to the bar and drinks himself stupid before drawing a map to the mine. He takes the map to Julia and shows her how to get from the marker cactus and Weaver's Needle to the mine. He says he is not coming back and she needs to come to the mine if they are to be together. He says it will take a few days for him to shake the followers and she may get there ahead of him. Pete comes in and Julia tries to hide the map. Pete takes the map and he knows now that his wife is in love with Waltz. He says he will kill Waltz at the mine. Pete and Julia, with a pair of burros, hike through the rough country to the mine. However, Waltz has tricked him and he is on the ridge above. At the mine, Pete sends Julia to lure Waltz out into the open. Doesn't work. She sends Pete for the burros and takes the rifle to murder Pete. However, Pete rounds a bend before she can shoot. When he gets to the top, Waltz has taken their burros and supplies. Waltz begins rolling rocks towards the pair. They are trapped on the ledge and can't get away. Julia appeals to Waltz, but he continues to hurdle rocks. During the night, Julia climbs to Waltz and says Pete forced her to bring him to the mine. Pete wakes and fires at Waltz. Waltz interprets this as another of Julia's tricks. He pushes a rock and knocks her back down to the ledge. Waltz keeps him pinned down on the ledge as they run out of water and become more desperate. Pete continues to fire, but he is at a disadvantage being downslope. Finally, he runs out of bullets. He throws the rifle over the cliff. It's the one Storm found later. Even after Pete gives up, Waltz leaves the pair baking without water. Waltz throws down a canteen and watches the couple fight over the water. He then shoots the canteen, denying them both a drink. I told you he was a mean guy. Pete starts screaming for Waltz to take Julia, saying it was all her idea. She takes Pete's knife and stabs him in the back. Julia makes the case for true love as she climbs towards Waltz.
True love, you heard him? You could not ask for a more noble cause than that.
But that's not what he said. He distinctly said to blave. And as we all know, to blave means to bluff.
He watches from above as she falls back to the ledge. Suddenly, an earthquake brings the entire mountain down on Julia. Waltz climbs down to where Julia is buried, showing that he might have cared for her a little. The story returns to modern time. Storm, the coroner, and Deputy Coven are in the morgue. Storm says the rifle he found, the stories from the old folks, the veracity of the earthquake, and a female skeleton found on the mountain all indicate that he is near the mine location. Deputy Walter tells Storm to be careful because there's still a killer in the mountains. Storm and his burro head out into the mountains, but soon become lost. At last, he finds the place where he was attacked by the rattlesnake and found the old rifle. He climbs higher and finds old Spanish markings, but he can't interpret the signs. He locates a hole in the rock. He places a stick in the hole and checks the alignment. On the third try, the stick points towards the rock window in Weaver's Needle. Storm thinks he is the only one who has ever seen this information. He climbs to the rock window and notes that it is man-made. Storm sees his shadow from the rock window and realizes this is how to find the mine. Storm goes back to the carvings, but Deputy Coven is there waiting. Storm explains what he knows before realizing that he may be in trouble. Coven pulls a gun on Storm. Coven says he has been looking for the mine for 20 years and that the rock window is the key. Coven walks Storm out to a high ledge, intending to throw him off. Storm attacks Coven and they fall to a lower ledge as they fight. Storm slips over the edge but hangs on by his fingers. Coven is going to kick Storm off, but he is suddenly hit twice in the neck by a rattlesnake that was sunning on one of the ledges. Coven falls to his death. Sheriff Lynn and Deputy Walter meet with Storm at the location of Coven's body. Walter had followed Storm into the mountains, suspecting Coven all along. Storm is a little upset to be used as bait. Storm and Sheriff Lynn go to a ledge and wait for the full moon signal to shine through the rock notch. The moonlight illuminates the location. Storm starts digging.
Look at it. I'm standing right in the center of it.
Sheriff Lynn finally tells Storm that the earthquake and movement of the Earth and Moon keep the location unknown. Storm decides to leave the mystery to others if they care to look. Conclusion. Lust for Gold is steeped in noir despite its Western setting. The flashback structure frames the tale like a confession, peeling away the crime and betrayal. Waltz is not a historic prospector, but a killer undone by his own greed. Julia epitomizes the femme fatale whose schemes consume her. Even the modern-day storyline mirrors film noir, with Coven revealed as a treacherous lawman hiding corruption behind a badge. The Western setting provides a striking counterpoint to the noir elements. The blazing Arizona sun and wide desert expanses replace shadowy city streets, but the psychological darkness is the same. The mind becomes a Western equivalent of the typical film noir MacGuffin, like a briefcase full of cash or a missing jewel. Its allure is irresistible, but its possession only leads to ruin. Simon's direction heightened the clash of tones, emphasizing the unforgiving terrain while framing characters in close, tense shots that feel more urban than frontier. According to IMDb.com, there was a real Jacob Waltz who claimed to have discovered the lost Dutchman mine. He died of pneumonia in 1891 on his Arizona ranch. While he was sick, he was cared for by a nurse named Julia Thomas. This is the same name used for Ida Lupino's character in this film. The real Julia Thomas said Waltz gave her the mine's location before he died. Later, in a money-making scheme, Thomas sold shares in the mining company, but nothing was ever found. World-famous short summary: greed wears gold as its crown. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If you want more, be sure to subscribe, hit the like, and ring the bell. Beware the Moors. Alright, in a couple seconds, some boxes are going to pop up here. One is another film noir review like this. The other is a list of film noir reviews.